And welcome to a new segment, really. We're going to call this segment, I don't know, F.A.F.O with Lurie Daniel Favors. F.A.F.O with Lurie. But welcome to a new era. Hello, Instagram, TikTok, wherever else this is going to be. You're joining us here at Urban View. I'm streaming from outside the SiriusXM studios today. But I want to talk about the F.A.F.O era in which we now find ourselves. Okay, and you see that I'm smiling a little bit because as there's that verse, what the devil meant for evil, the Lord has meant for your good. And we're going to have an opportunity to see exactly what that looks like, right? So, as I've explained before, we've talked a lot about Project 2025. I've been talking about Project 2025 for over a year, and trying to warn people, feeling like I was Noah telling people the rain is coming. And so now we're here. We are here. The nation, largely populated by people who don't know things and for whom knowing things is considered a negative. We are in a moment right now where the majority of the nation chose a pathway that is very interesting. And in just a minute, Urban View, you're going to hear some clips because one of the things we also know is that one of the main search engine terms that was entered in on the night of the election and the days thereafter was, can I change my vote? Can I change my vote? What is Project 2025? These are things that people began Googling afterwards because they realized once they owned the libs and won the election, and the libs were like, Godspeed. I hope you get everything that you voted for. And they realized it wasn't going to be a whole lot of tears when they saw that black women wasn't going to take it to the streets. And we was just like, all right, bet. I got you. You like it? I love it. Right? Once they saw that, they began to have a different realization and began actually listening to the people who had been telling them, hey, this thing, you were celebrating Veterans Day now, and then did you know Project 2025 plans to cut veterans affairs and plans, as I just mentioned in the previous segment, and plans to privatize your health care and close your VA offices? Did you know that? And limit the amount of disabilities for which you can get compensated? Did you know that? People began knowing things. All of a sudden, now it's important to know things. But we are in a new era. Thank you. We are in a new era. We're in the F.A.F.O area. So this is, we can call this segment F.A.F.O with Lurie Daniel Favors, right? We're going to have a lot of these. We're going to have a lot of these. But I want us to be clear that there's a lot of potential here. So I want to just share some of the things that I've been thinking about because we have some larger global issues. And when I say global, I mean, yes, international, but global in terms of overarching issues to consider. But there are also some things in the immediate. I was at a political conference, as I mentioned to my audience, and our audience will be taking your calls in just a bit, 866-801-8255. But as I'd mentioned to them, I was at a political conference over the past weekend, and I was talking to groups of people. And one of them was a couple of folks who were civil rights attorneys. And my question to them was, well, now that we are, we're taught, I was like, so how, what cases are you working on? And I was like, so that's really great. How is your theory of the case changing as a result of what happened on Tuesday? And their response was, what are you talking about? Tuesday was an election. I'm talking about this civil rights issue, I said, baby, your entire premise of this case is dependent upon the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prevents racism in the public distribution of resources. Your entire case depends on the Civil Rights Act still being considered valid. I'm like, you do realize that we are in an era where the Civil Rights Act could get struck down on day 2 of this administration. How is that impacting the theory of your case? They hadn't thought about it. And these are people who know Project 2025, but hadn't thought about it. I was talking with some organizers who do violence prevention. And, we were talking about violence prevention programs. And I was like, well, how does your work in the field, how are you adjusting? What scenarios are you planning for after Tuesday? And their reaction was, psh, we've been here before. Our ancestors, we've been here before. This ain't nothing new. And I said, baby, no, dear. Your ancestors have been here before. But you under 60 years old. You Gen X. You ain't never been here before. You ain't never known what it is to organize without the protections of the Civil Rights Act. You've never known what it is to organize without the protections of major pieces of legislation that now exist as a result of the things that people fought for in the civil rights era. Your ancestors been here before. We young. I'm in my 40s. I ain't never been here before. Now I done studied it. I know a hell of a lot about it, but living in it, never been here before. And I began posing a series of questions. And I said, well, listen, you're working with violence prevention and youth. And out of all the things I could think of, this is one of the most pressing for me. And that was the following scenario. Let's say, and we don't know what Project 2025 is going to look like when it rolls out. Because as I mentioned, there are 4 components to Project 2025. One is the 920 some odd page playbook, which I have gone through extensively with my audience. So we are aware, we know what's coming. 2 is the database of tens of thousands of employees that they are currently recruiting and training to be the most MAGA appointees and political operatives and civil servants, right? Part two also includes Schedule F, which is the executive the executive order that Donald Trump is going to sign that would allow him to fire tens of thousands of civil servants, the people who kept him from doing the worst of the things he wanted to do in the previous administration when he was in office. And then there's the third component, which is the training of these people so that they are able to be the most faithful MAGA sycophants in the government that we have ever known, kind of like replacing all of the civil servants with Nazis and Klans members. That's what's happening now. They're being trained on how to be effective at their jobs. But the fourth part that we don't really know much about is the playbook. Right? It's the 180-day playbook where they said within 180 days, they're going to roll out all their plans and platforms. Now, I don't know what that looks like. All I know is what they told us they're going to do. And so if we take them at their word, and if they do what they tell us we're going to do, these are some of the scenarios that I was posing to some of the folks I was speaking with over the weekend. Let's say that they do what they say they're going to do when it comes to financial aid or to the Department of Education. Let's say that, as they said in Project 2025, they want to get rid of the Department of Education, which means no more FAFSA form for financial aid for people going to college, no more Pell Grant calculations, no more SEOP programs, no more pipeline programs, no more ability to no more work study. All these things come out of the Department of Education. And again, this is if they do what they say they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't know when they're going to do it, but this is what they said they're going to do. So let's say they do that. Let's take them at their word. Let's say that they do the other things that they're going to do, which is to cut SNAP, which is food stamps, right? And let's say they can do all this in their time frame. They said they got 180 days. We're going to take them at their word. So let's say they cut SNAP, which is food stamps. They cut free lunch and free breakfast programs. And they cut all the programs that our kids rely upon both during school, after school, and during the summers. And let's say they do all of that, and they've got this 180-day playbook, which means January 20th is day one. What is that? June 20th, 6 months later, 180 days later would be the day 180. At the same time that all of our children are about to be finished with their spring semester. So we're going to have tens of thousands, dare I say millions of high school seniors who, if they do what they say they're going to do, won't have any way to pay for college. I mean, no student loan, they won't have no way to pay for college. At the same time that they will be rendered utterly unemployable with no skills. At the same time that our other students are going to be coming out. Now, they're also planning to cut daycare, right? They're also planning to cut health care, and they're going to take children who are between the ages of 18 and, I shouldn't say children, but you know how as a result of the Affordable Care Act, you can be on your parents' insurance until you're 26. So they're cutting that. So all of this is happening. If it happens as they say it will, within 180 days, then that means come June of this year, we have some things to think about, like who gonna feed these children? What are we going to do with tens of thousands, dare I say millions of young people in the summertime with no job prospects, no summer youth employment, no internship programs, and police who, according to Project 2025, will have complete immunity to do with them as they will. And if you're also going to, as they say they want to do, got to take them at their word, cut funding for programs like public defenders, you're going to unleash tens of thousands, dare I say millions of children to the summer where it's very hot, where there's no resources, where people are going to be hungry if they are who they say they are and they do what they say they're going to do. These are some of the challenges that we now face. Now, if we stop the story there, obviously, this is devastating. And I mean, quite frankly, even continuing the story, it's devastating. Until we are reminded of our power and potential in this moment. Who created free breakfast programs? Who created free lunch programs? Who realized that you have to feed people in order to teach them things and let them learn things? Oh, right, that was us. And by us, I mean Black Panthers, Black people. Who created public school? Who realized that there was a need for a systematized ability to educate children in a way that would empower them to be meaningful contributors to society? Wasn't that formerly enslaved Africans who took that notion and formalized it in states like South Carolina? That would be us. That would be us. Who are the people who recognize that now that you are no longer enslaved and white people ain't going to do nothing for you, you got to build for yourself. You have to create your own towns, your own stores, your own shops, your own businesses, your own educational institutions. That would be us. Our ancestors did that, right? And so while we have all of the challenges, and I need us to be mindful of the challenges because they are manifold, we also have all the potential solutions. Because while we have not been here before, Our ancestors have. And they fundamentally laid pathways and opportunities and information out for us to be able to understand how we take those skills and use them to the best of our ability in this day and age. These folks have basically said, we're just not that into you. Like, we the whites, we the patriarchs, we're just not that into you. We're going to cut daycare because we don't want women working outside the house. We're going to cut childcare. We're going to cut reproductive health because we want you pregnant at home. We're just not that into this whole freedom. We're not that into it for y'all. We're not that into it for y'all. So now we get to decide. We get to decide. We get to decide what it might look like. When a lot of us have romanticized what happened during integration, when we abandoned things, well, now we get to decide, what does it look like when we come back together? We get to decide, what does it mean to bring all of our gifts, skills, and talents back to the space? And to be clear, I'm not going to say we've been here before. Our ancestors have. So that means we have to now study. We have to see what they did. We got to learn things. And even though books have been banned and critical race theory is like a thing that people are fighting, let's be honest. Those books in the libraries at them schools were taught by 80% of white women, our kids wasn't reading them books. They wasn't reading them books in them schools. But you know where we can read them books? At home, in faith-based institutions, and in things that we own, things that we run. If you're a part of the Divine Nine, hey, shout out to my soul roars and all my D9 brothers and sisters. If your social action committee is not the largest, most poppinest, most active committee with people banging at the door to get in, what are you doing? What are we doing? If you are a part of a faith-based institution and you don't have a social action ministry, one, damn that, but what are you doing? If your pastor does not have a capacity and a vision for how the word of God in the church gonna make it outside the walls of the church and actually be a threat to the white supremacist demons running around, what are you doing? And if you go to a church and you've been going to that church for some time and the community around the church looks as fucked up as it did when coming in years later as it did when you started going there, what are you doing? What are you doing? What I'm coming to realize is I wanted Kamala Harris to win. I did. But I'm also clear that had she won, we might have done what we did with President Barack Obama or any other Democratic president. And maybe we might have been content to just continue the slow Democratic Party's march towards progress. I often have said the Republicans are trying to wipe us out. The Democrats move slow as molasses. So neither of them are effective and neither of them are going to create Wakanda. That's for us to do. And so now we can no longer engage in that slow march towards progress. We're no longer going to be able to just sort of allow things to just be as they are and just be content with an each one, teach one ethos. That day is over. That is done. And now we get to show and prove. It just so happens we descended from people who, frankly, birthed math, science, intellectual discourse, literacy, literature, the study of the stars, the most perfect alignment of science and nature and spirituality that the world has ever known. We're in a good position, as fucked up as this situation is. So now we get to show and prove. Welcome to the era of F.A.F.O. But in addition to all the F.A.F.O-ing that we know is going to happen, we also now get to find out just how powerful we really are. And I think that might scare them more than it scares some of us, which is why they're so intent on reminding us about how little power they think we have. But our source of supply does not come from them. They are our genealogical children, useless to the needs of this world, funded by apartheid billionaires. We got this. If we get this, and that is a decision that we all get to make. You can F.A.F.O if you want to, for good or for evil. But what I do know right now is that we have a full plate of opportunities and ingredients to figure some things out. And if we tap into the power that we all claim to have, if we tap into the power that we all know that we have, and if we tune out the noise and focus in on us, there ain't shit we can't do. And that's on God, in the name of Jesus, Allah, and Buddha.